Oh hey, a Christopher Nolan movie about a historically decisive World War II battle. Two things that nobody ever gets bent out of shape about if you don't immediately affirm a perfect, unquestioning love and affection for them. Right? So Christopher Nolan is the unquestioned film school bro god figure of the moment, an undeniable auteur craftsman of occasionally staggering technical acumen whose catalog nonetheless flatters said bro's baser sensibilities by putting that substantial skill towards infusing artistic credibility into defiantly macho subject matter like revenge, con artistry, heists, rocket ships, and Batman. And unlike former film school bro godheads like Quentin Tarantino, he hasn't yet made things complicated for his acolytes by asking them to invest a nominal interest in global culture, women, or identity issues. That's not necessarily a criticism, it's an observation. Nolan is unique among filmmakers working at his level from his generation in that his work is singularly disinterested in human beings and their meddlesome emotional inner lives, hence why his best movie by far is all about how feelings are destructive psychological viruses that get in the way of creating believable fantasy worlds. He's a devout technician, overwhelmingly more interested in the hypothetical blueprints behind heists, cons, or vigilantism than in the humanity of his human chess pieces, a filmmaker who once decreed that an aesthetic decision like Anne Hathaway in high heels needed a practical utilitarian explanation. All of which makes the Dunkirk evacuation just about the most perfect subject matter imaginable for both his skill set and sensibilities. A brutal, enormously complicated, messy as hell World War II military operation held in particular reverence in the British national psyche that offers him a gigantic canvas of interlocking clockwork mechanisms to obsess over the inner workings of, and real-life, fact-based stakes the humanity of which must have seemed so recognizably built in and goes without saying apparent that he need not once again flail impotently against the cosmic walls of Murph's bookcase, trying to convince us that no, he really understands how human beings work on us. Murph! Anyway, a decisive moment in the first half of World War II, i.e. that part that American filmmakers generally don't like to talk about, the Dunkirk evacuation involved a strategic retreat from France back across the English Channel by beleaguered British and Allied forces that was complicated by geographic inaccessibility and a lack of available warships, ultimately leading Churchill to order civilian boats from England to mobilize for the rescue while stranded soldiers held out as best they could. But while the inherent drama there is easy to imagine, the actual reality of the event has rendered it difficult to depict on film compared to other iconic moments from the war. It took an agonizingly long amount of time, it was grueling and messy and murky and had too many moving parts. But Nolan, ever the master technician, opts to solve this problem through a genuinely ingenious trick of clarifying through complication, by playing around with time compression. You see, the film's storyline divides into three separate narrative tracks for land, sea, and air. One storyline following a group of soldiers struggling to survive on the beach, another centered on middle-class father and son yacht crew making their way across the channel to join the rescue effort, and a third tracking a pair of Royal Air Force pilots trying to provide cover fire for their mates on the ground. However, each of these stories proceeds on its own separate timescale and don't fully synchronize until the very end. The land storyline takes place over about 1 week, the sea portion is only about 1 day, and we're really only up in the air with the pilots for about an hour. And yeah, I'll commit what I'm assuming will be film bro heresy by next week and admit that this does feel slightly confusing and needlessly overcomplicated at times. And not only because if you happen to blink during the first half of the movie, you might completely miss the title cards indicating that this is what's going on. The obvious functionality of expanding and contracting the different timelines in order to make everything feel uniformly immediate and thrilling is always apparent, but until the beats start fully clicking into place toward the end of Act 2, you can't help but feel like you're watching the humorless Rube Goldberg machinery of Christopher Nolan's mind show off at the expense of dramatic cohesion. Fortunately, the evident calculation that the human drama comes built into the premise does eventually pick up a lot of the slack. Cillian Murphy is haunting as a rattled shell-shock victim, Kenneth Branagh shows up to deliver what might be his most naturalistic and understated performance ever, Tom Hardy is essentially auditioning to replace the Lions on the Royal Arms of England as an RAF ace gliding on fumes to stay airborne long enough to kill one last Nazi fighter, and Mark Rylance as the civilian yacht captain who damn near shows up wearing an "I'm the soul of the movie" t-shirt, gamely commits to the Herculean task of making a Christopher Nolan film feel humanistic and kinda pulls it off. And yeah, when the bulk of your film is dialogue-free depictions of harrowing rescues, boat sinkings, plane crashings, young soldiers starving, shivering, pinned down by gunfire, drowning, you'd have to be made of stone yourself not to get wrapped up in it. So even though I was ultimately left with the feeling that the technological IMAX wizard wizardry and the look at me, aren't I a clever boy timeline gimmickry, and also the utterly bizarre decision to make it an all but bloodlessly PG-13, which, yes, does end up making things feel unsavourably sterile and stagey at points, kinda kept it detached at arm's length from being a truly great film. It is, for the most part, a perfectly solid military procedural drama with enough humanity where necessary to connect where it really needs to. I sincerely wish I liked it more, but 3 stars, absolutely worth seeing on the big screen.